What happens when a seasoned journalist finally decides that she has reached the absolute limit of her tolerance for royal privilege and chooses to confront a prince directly, calling him out right there on live television in front of millions? Well, you are about to find out in vivid detail. Because what unfolded on The View that day was nothing short of explosive, the kind of moment that leaves viewers wide-eyed and buzzing long after the broadcast ends. Before we dive deep into this incredible and highly charged confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, because trust me, you are going to want to talk about this one with anyone who will listen. The stage was set under the blazing glare of the studio lights, every surface gleaming, every camera perfectly focused. Megyn Kelly, known for her sharp intellect and unapologetic candor, settled into the guest host chair with the unmistakable air of someone ready for a serious conversation. Her signature confidence radiated across the set, the kind of presence that lets everyone in the room know she is here to speak her mind. She had been invited to co-host a special episode focusing on media accountability and the public's perception of high-profile figures. Little did anyone realize that this seemingly routine episode would become the setting for one of the most uncomfortable and pointed interviews of Prince Harry's career. "Our next guest needs no introduction," Whoopi Goldberg announced, her voice carrying its usual warmth but tinged with a subtle edge of tension. "He's here to discuss his latest charitable initiative and his ongoing relationship with the media. Please welcome Prince Harry." The audience erupted into applause as Prince Harry stepped confidently onto the set. His composed demeanor and easy smile, the same one that had charmed millions around the world, were firmly in place. Dressed impeccably, he settled into the interview chair with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to public appearances. But while the audience seemed enthusiastic, Megyn Kelly's expression was noticeably cooler. "Prince Harry, welcome to The View," she began, her tone professional but underlined with a crisp formality. "I have to say it's interesting timing for this appearance, given some of the recent statements you've made about media responsibility." Harry shifted slightly in his seat, perhaps already sensing the undercurrent in her question. "Thank you for having me, Megyn. Yes, I think it's more important than ever to have these conversations about how the media operates and the impact it has on real people's lives." "Real people's lives," Kelly repeated, leaning forward just a touch, her eyes locking onto his. "That's fascinating, coming from someone who has made a career out of selling those very personal stories to the highest bidder. Tell me, how do you reconcile advocating for privacy while simultaneously writing tell-all books and giving explosive interviews?" The studio fell into a sudden, heavy silence. This was not the gentle, carefully scripted exchange Harry might have expected. Joy Behar shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while Sarah Haynes glanced nervously between the two. Harry's trademark smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before he recovered. "I think there's a difference between controlling your own narrative and having it controlled by others. Megyn, when you've been lied about, when your family has been attacked, sometimes you have to set the record straight." "Set the record straight," Kelly echoed, nodding slowly but with a sharpness in her tone. "Is that what we're calling it now? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like a systematic campaign to damage your own family for profit. You've accused them of racism, of cutting you off financially, of refusing to protect your wife, yet here you are, still using your royal title, still trading on the very institution you claim mistreated you." The tension was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Every camera in the room captured the subtle tightening of Harry's jaw. "I think you're oversimplifying a very complex situation, Megyn. The institution and the family are two different things." "Are they?" Kelly shot back instantly. "Because you seem to conflate them whenever it's convenient for your narrative. Your grandmother, who you've said you loved deeply, was the head of that institution.
Your father, who you've publicly criticized, is now the head of that institution. So when you attack the monarchy, aren't you in fact attacking them personally?" Harry's composure was beginning to fray. "That's not fair, Megyn. You're twisting my words." "I'm using your words," Kelly replied coolly. "Your exact words taken from multiple interviews and your own book. You can't have it both ways, Prince Harry. You can't claim to want privacy while giving interview after interview. You can't say you want to protect your family while publicly airing their private conversations. And you certainly can't position yourself as a victim while living in a multi-million-dollar mansion and signing lucrative media deals." The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they should step in. Whoopi finally broke the silence. "Megyn, I think we should let Harry respond." "Oh, I want him to respond," Kelly said firmly. "I want him to explain to the mothers watching this show, to the single mothers, to the women working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, how someone who was born into unimaginable privilege, who has never wanted for anything, can stand here and claim to be a victim of circumstance." Harry's face flushed. His royal training was warring with a very human frustration. "You don't know what it was like growing up in that environment, Megyn. You don't know what it's like to lose your mother to the very media you're defending, to watch your wife be torn apart by the same machine." "You're right," Kelly acknowledged, but her voice remained unyielding. "I don't know what it's like to be born into royalty, but I do know what it's like to work for everything I have. I know what it's like to face media scrutiny and criticism without a team of publicists or a multi-million-dollar platform to fight back. And I know what accountability looks like." The audience was silent now, their eyes darting between the two. "Accountability," Harry repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Let's talk about accountability, Megyn. Let's talk about the media's accountability for my mother's death, for the racist coverage of my wife, for the lies and distortions printed about my family for decades." Kelly's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing her opening. "Your mother's death was a tragedy. No one disputes that. But using her death as a shield for your own choices, for your own actions, is not honoring her memory. That's exploiting it. And as for your wife, she was a working actress who dated a prince and became a duchess. Media attention comes with that territory. You knew it, she knew it, everyone knew it. She didn't deserve the treatment she received," Harry insisted, his voice tight. "No one deserves unfair treatment. But life isn't fair, Prince Harry, and instead of handling it with grace and dignity, like your grandmother did for 70 years, like your father has done, like your brother is doing, you chose to burn it all down, and now you want sympathy for the consequences of your own choices." Harry's hands clenched tightly in his lap, his royal composure now completely gone. "You think you know everything, don't you, Megyn? You sit here in your ivory tower passing judgment on people you've never met, situations you've never experienced." Kelly's brows arched slightly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Ivory tower, that's rich, coming from someone who literally lived in palaces. But you're right about one thing. I do pass judgment. It's called journalism, and it's what I've built my career on. Unlike some people, I didn't inherit my platform." "You have no idea the kind of pressure I was under," Harry shot back, his voice cracking. "The constant scrutiny, the impossible expectations, watching my wife struggle with suicidal thoughts because of the treatment she received from the very same media."
The studio audience reacted with a sharp, collective gasp at this raw revelation, the sound rippling through the air like a sudden cold wind. But Kelly, sitting with her usual poise, didn't so much as blink. "Those are serious allegations, Prince Harry," she said, her voice firm and unshaken. "And if they're true, they deserve compassion. They deserve real mental health support. But using them as a weapon to publicly bludgeon your family, that's not seeking help. That's seeking revenge."
For a moment, the weight of her words seemed to hang over the entire set. Joy Behar, finally finding her voice after minutes of tense silence, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Megyn, maybe we should focus on Harry's charitable work," she suggested, her tone almost pleading. But Kelly simply waved her off with a brisk motion of her hand. "No, Joy," she said, her tone unyielding. "This, right here, is exactly the kind of soft glove treatment that has allowed this behavior to continue unchecked. Prince Harry didn't come on this show just to talk about his causes. He came here to promote himself, to sell his version of events, and to position himself as a perpetual victim. I think the audience deserves to hear some hard truths." Harry leaned forward then, the muscles in his jaw tightening, his eyes flashing with unmistakable anger. "Hard truths? You want hard truths, Megyn? Fine. The hard truth is that the British press killed my mother, and they were on their way to doing the same thing to my wife. The hard truth is that my own family threw us to the wolves to protect themselves." Kelly didn't flinch. "Your mother chose to get in that car," she replied, bluntly, her voice drawing audible gasps from the audience. "She chose not to wear a seatbelt. She chose to be with a man who was driving recklessly. Yes, the paparazzi were pursuing them, and yes, that was wrong, deeply wrong. But at some point, personal responsibility has to be part of the conversation." Harry's face went pale for a split second, and then it flushed a furious red. "How dare you? How dare you sit there and blame my mother for her own death?" "I'm not blaming her," Kelly clarified, her voice steady and precise, even as the atmosphere in the studio grew hotter by the second. Whoopi Goldberg, sensing the rising temperature of the exchange, tried to step in again. "Maybe we should take a commercial break," she suggested cautiously. But Harry said no, his voice firm but trembling slightly with rage. "I want to finish this." He leaned forward, his voice cutting through the air. "You think you're so clever, with your gotcha questions and your superior attitude, but you're just another media parasite, feeding on other people's pain for your own gain." Kelly's lips curved into a sharper smile. "There it is," she said. "The real Prince Harry. Not the grieving son, not the protective husband, the polished media-trained royal who can't handle being challenged. You know what the difference is between us, Prince Harry? When I'm criticized, when I'm attacked, when I make mistakes, I don't write a book about it. I don't go on an international media tour. I don't blame my family. I take responsibility, and then I move on." "You have no idea what you're talking about," he sputtered, clearly losing the tight grip on the narrative he had expected to control. "Don't I?" Kelly leaned back in her chair now, completely at ease. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a man who was given every opportunity, every resource, every privilege imaginable. A man who inherited a platform capable of doing incredible good in the world, and instead of rising to that challenge, instead of honoring the legacy you were given, you decided to tear it all down, because you couldn't stand sharing the spotlight with your brother." "This has nothing to do with William," Harry protested, but his voice lacked the steel of conviction. "Everything has to do with William. He's the heir, you're the spare, and you've never gotten over it. Your entire life has been shaped by that reality, and instead of finding your own way, your own role, you burned the whole thing down. Your book, your interviews, your endless complaints, they all trace back to the same resentment, that your brother was born first." Harry stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the studio floor. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this." "Actually, you do," Kelly said calmly, not moving an inch. "You agreed to this appearance. You came here to sell your narrative, but narratives work both ways. And right now, the story unfolding is about a privileged man who cannot handle criticism." Sarah Haynes finally spoke up, her voice gentle. "Harry, please, sit down. Let's try to have a civil conversation." But Harry remained standing, his chest rising and falling quickly. "Civil? There's nothing civil about what she's doing. She's ambushing me, twisting my words, attacking my family. I'm asking you questions, the same questions millions of people are asking. If you can't answer them, if you can't defend your choices without blowing up, then maybe you shouldn't be giving interviews at all." "You think this is a tantrum?" Harry's voice rose again, raw with emotion. "You think standing up from my wife, from my children, from my mother's memory is a tantrum? I think using them as shields while you attack everyone else is cowardly. I think turning their pain into your personal brand is despicable. And I think hiding behind victimhood while living in luxury is pathetic." The audience sat frozen. The air in the studio felt almost electric, thick with tension. Harry's gaze darted from face to face, as though searching for an ally or an exit. "You know what, Megyn?" Harry said finally, his voice dropping to a cold, deliberate whisper. "You're everything that's wrong with modern media. You're cruel, you're heartless, and you're exactly the kind of person who made my life hell as a child." Kelly tilted her head, regarding him for a beat before replying. "And you, Prince Harry, are everything that's wrong with modern celebrity culture. You want the perks of fame without the responsibility. You want sympathy without accountability. You want to be the perpetual victim while living like a king." Her words hung between them, heavy and unmovable. Harry's face flickered with emotion, anger, hurt, disbelief, before settling into a controlled, calculated expression. Slowly, he sat back down, each movement deliberate. "You want to play this game, Megyn?" he asked quietly, his voice taking on an edge no one had heard before. "Fine. Let's talk about accountability, your accountability. How many lives have you wrecked with your so-called reporting? How many families have you torn apart just to get ratings?" For the first time, Kelly's confidence wavered just slightly. "I report the truth, Prince Harry, something you seem allergic to." Harry let out a short, bitter laugh. "Is that what you call it when you spend weeks tearing apart a grieving family? When you turn real tragedy into entertainment? You talk about my mother as though she was some reckless teenager, instead of a woman hunted day and night by photographers who saw her as nothing but a commodity. Your mother was a grown woman who made choices," Kelly said, though with less fire than before. "My mother was 36 years old, and she was trying to find happiness after a marriage destroyed by an institution that cared more about appearances than people. She was stalked, harassed, commodified every single day, and when she died, people like you turned it into a product, into something to be dissected for the world's amusement." Whoopi leaned forward slightly. "Harry, I think we all understand your pain."
"Do you?" Harry turned sharply toward her, his eyes blazing, his tone cutting through the air. "Because Megyn here just told a national television audience that my mother was responsible for her own death." His voice was steady, but laced with fury. "She sat there, comfortable in her chair, and reduced one of the most traumatic events in modern royal history to some shallow lesson about personal responsibility. Kelly shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't say she was responsible," she replied, trying to keep her composure. "I said multiple factors were involved." "You said she chose to get in that car," Harry shot back instantly. "You said she chose not to wear a seatbelt. You reduced her final moments to a checklist of bad decisions, while completely ignoring the fact that she was literally running for her life from the very media machine you represent." The studio audience was completely locked in now, eyes darting between the two. What had begun as a controlled interview had flipped entirely. Harry had found his footing, while Kelly, for the first time, looked uncertain. "And you want to talk about my book? My interviews?" Harry pressed, his voice rising with momentum. "At least I'm telling my own story. At least I'm speaking my own truth, instead of letting others twist it. You've made an entire career out of telling other people's stories, often without their permission, often without their consent." Joy Behar tried to defuse the tension with a forced smile. "Well, that's what journalists do, Harry." "Is it?" Harry turned to her with an incredulous expression. "Is that what journalism is? Because I thought journalism was about holding power accountable, about speaking truth to authority. Instead, what I see is a media ecosystem that protects the powerful and attacks the vulnerable, turning human suffering into entertainment." Kelly straightened slightly, reclaiming her voice. "You're not vulnerable, Prince Harry. You're one of the most privileged people alive. Privilege doesn't protect you from pain. Privilege doesn't protect you from loss. Privilege doesn't protect you from watching the woman you love contemplate suicide because of the way she's being treated." His words landed like blows. "You think money and titles make you immune to human suffering? I think they give you resources most people don't have," Kelly replied, though her earlier confidence had noticeably thinned. "Resources?" Harry's voice rose, almost cracking. "What resources? A family that leaked stories about me to protect themselves? An institution that left my wife to be torn apart? A press that turned every detail of our lives into content?" He leaned in slightly. "Tell me, Megyn, what resource should I have used when my wife was getting death threats? When she was called names I won't repeat on television? When she was compared to my mother in the cruelest ways imaginable?" The studio had gone utterly silent. Even the camera operators seemed frozen in place. "You want to know why I wrote that book?" Harry continued, his voice softening into something even more piercing. "Because for 38 years, other people have been writing my story. Other people deciding who I am, what I think, what I feel. Most of those people have never met me, never spoken to me, never cared about me as a human being." Kelly made an attempt to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "But surely you understand that public figures are subject to scrutiny." "Scrutiny?" Harry nodded slightly. "Yes, but what happened to my wife, what happened to my mother, that wasn't scrutiny. That was harassment. That was abuse. And the fact that you can't see the difference because we're royal tells me everything I need to know about you and the industry you represent." Sarah Ann, one of the other hosts, looked visibly moved. "Harry, I think a lot of people don't realize the human cost of fame." "That's exactly right," Harry said, turning to her with gratitude. "Everyone sees the palaces, the titles, the ceremonies. They don't see the children crying because their father is being attacked in the press. They don't see the sleepless nights, the constant security fears, the way every ordinary human moment can be twisted into a scandal." Kelly, determined to recover control, pushed back once more. "But you chose to stay in the public eye. You could have stepped back quietly." Harry turned to her again, this time with an expression almost pitying. "Could I, Megyn? Could I really?
Every time I tried to step back, the press followed. Every time I tried to find privacy, you found new ways to intrude. The only choice you gave me was to take control of my own narrative or let you control it for me. So you chose profit, Kelly said weakly. I chose survival, Harry corrected sharply. I chose to tell my story before you could twist it beyond recognition. I chose to define myself before you could define me. And clearly, based on your reaction, that was the right choice. Whoopi finally stepped in. I think we need to wrap this up. No, Whoopi, Harry interrupted. Let me finish. Megyn came here today thinking she'd expose me, tear me down in front of your audience. Instead, she's exposed herself, shown exactly what I've been talking about, the cruelty, the lack of empathy, the willingness to turn someone's pain into a spectacle. He stood up again, not in anger this time, but with a kind of quiet dignity. I came here to talk about my charitable work, the causes I care about, ways to make a positive difference. Instead, I was attacked, dismissed, and had my mother's death used as a weapon against me. If this is what passes for journalism today, maybe the problem isn't with the people being interviewed. Harry looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who has ever felt attacked, dismissed, or misunderstood by the media, your pain is valid, your story matters, and you have the right to tell it yourself. Turning back to the panel, he added, "Thank you for having me, even if it wasn't the conversation any of us expected." As Harry walked off the set, the studio remained frozen in stunned silence. Kelly sat motionless, processing what had just happened. The other hosts exchanged uncertain glances, unsure how to proceed. Finally, Whoopi spoke. "Well, that was certainly something. We'll be right back after this commercial break." The cameras cut away, but the audience stayed silent, still absorbing the intensity of the exchange. It was clear that no one, least of all Megyn Kelly, had expected Prince Harry to walk away as the clear victor. And that's a wrap on this extraordinary confrontation. What did you think of Harry's comeback? Did Megyn Kelly cross the line, or was she simply doing her job? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments like this.